I've been thinking about blues a lot lately. I always do actually, but because I'm a long time blues and I play blues and jazz. That's kind of my bag and sort of American gumbo music. Played my share of country music all along the way to make a living and all that. But what I really focus on is the intersection of jazz and blues and American music from sort of pre Beatles, you know. But I love the Beatles too. But anyway, that's my idea. Um, and I have a new book out called Melodic Blues Guitar Soloing, and it's on Guitar Vivo. You can get it on Amazon. And I wanted to spend just a little bit of time talking about kind of the primary subject that this concept of melodic blues suggests. I think it's kind of a rite of passage for guitar players to learn the pentatonic scale and begin wiggling their fingers and trying to imitate whoever they like, you know. And so what I thought we would do is play around with this phrase, breaking out of the boxes. So there's this idea that if you're in a box, you've got to break out of it. But with pentatonic type material, people even call them, teachers and students even call them boxes, right? The BB King box or the box number one, because they're little sort of 2-note per string things that look like various odd shaped boxes. I play around with that a little bit because I'm interested in breaking into the boxes rather than breaking out of them. So if you imagine breaking into the boxes, I'll give you an idea about what I mean by that. So let's say I play an A minor pentatonic scale, which I'm sure everybody knows. And I think there's a lot of really wonderful stuff inside of the area of the box that we can explore. And so that's why we're going to spend a little bit of time today breaking into the boxes, finding out what's in between. What are those notes that are in there? What are those sounds that are in between? Right? So we'll start with this first box that almost everybody learns, the A minor pentatonic scale at the 5th fret. Okay. And then as it applies to blues, if you play that and just play this sound, I don't think anybody would argue that that sounds terribly bluesy. It really doesn't. It's almost more oriental sounding or I don't know, exotic sounding or something, depending on what kind of harmony you put with it. There's nothing wrong with it at all. But if you listen closely to blues from the earliest days till modern times, depending on what variety of blues you listen to, because that's a big, big word, the blues, right? A lot of what I would consider to be the basic blues vernacular, the kind of the language of the blues, isn't exactly that sound, right? So what I'd like to talk to you about today is adding in some notes to this basic structure and learning how to use them so that you can get closer to the common blues vocabulary, okay? And by that, I don't necessarily mean the guitar blues vocabulary. And I think my idea of blues is quite historically broad, okay? So, but we'll see what we can do. One of the things that we'll notice is that blues, particularly what we might think of as major blues or, you know, standard blues, you know, we have the 1, 4, and the 5. Okay? And it turns out that that scale that we think and we're told over and over and over in magazines and by friends and in tutorials and whatnot, We're told that the A minor pentatonic is what we need to know in order to play an A blues. And it turns out that there's some stuff missing there that's pretty glaring in its absence. For instance, this A7, which is the typical one chord for a blues, it has a C sharp in it. And that note is not in the supposed scale. And then if you go to the 4 chord, it's got an F sharp in it. That note is also not in the supposed scale that we're supposed to use to play over this. Similarly, if you go to the 5 chord, that's the third of of E7, the G sharp, also not in the scale. So one thing we can do right away to have the scale that we're using, I'll talk more about this idea of a scale in a minute, but let's assume we're starting with the notion that you're going to want to enhance this basic A minor pentatonic scale for the purposes of playing melodies that fit into a blues format. We might want to add in the C sharp when we're playing an A7 chord. We might want to add in an F sharp when we're playing the D7 chord. And we might want to play around with, at least consider the possibility of a G sharp over the E. And what is that going to sound like? Well, we don't want to throw out anything. We just want to add stuff in. So for instance, to get that C sharp, we can play this. All right, everybody get your guitar in your lap and just play from a C to a C sharp. Right? Now, if you hear this sound, and I'm going to play a chord now and make that movement. That already starts to sound bluesy, much more bluesy than straight minor pentatonic. So you play the flat third, then the third on the G string, then the root on the top string, and then the flat 7 on the B string or the second string. We have a little blues lick. Right? So immediately sounds bluesy and it fits the chord. We can do the same thing on the D chord. Right? Now, you might notice, well, that doesn't sound much like Stevie Ray Vaughan. And you'd be right. But it does have reference to something that guys, more modern guys, post-Stevie Ray Vaughan guys, are always referencing, right? Is this sound of the flat third and the dance between the flat third and the major third on the 1 chord. Some people might get that sound by doing this. Bending the flat third. Now, if you pull that C natural toward the floor and get it up something like a half step, maybe a little less than a half step, and then play the root on the 7th fret of the D string, that's another sound that's inherently bluesy, but it includes a note that's not in the scale, right? So you'll hear guys, the great masters especially, they might play something like this. I took the 4th, I bent it to the 5th, let it go down back to the 4th, then I took this flat third, which isn't in the chord, bent it up toward the note that is in the chord, and then back to the root. Okay? So that's the first thing that we can do to make the minor pentatonic vocabulary and all the fingerings that we're used to, because we don't really have to do terribly much different than what we're already used to. Add a note in to what's already there, or bend a note to a particular destination. That can enhance what we already have. Immediately enhance what we have, get us closer to the sound of the masters. And not just guitar players, by the way. We got to learn, as guitar players, we have to learn to listen beyond our favorite instrument, because that's where we can get a lot of inspiration. And you might find it kind of challenging to do that because if a saxophone player is playing and you can't really relate to the sound because you're a guitar player. But if you listen closely, stick with it, get used to it, try and pick little things out from vocalists, from horn players, from piano players. Try to always add some of that stuff into your daily practicing. You're going to find that you'll hear something more about the blues than you might have been thinking about if you just listen to guitar players. Harmonica players, for instance, can be really good sources of cool melodies. And they tend not to be very guitaristic, even though it's a simple instrument. Okay, so I'm talking about this stuff in terms of numbers, how those notes relate to the chord of the moment, which in this case would be A7. Show me your hands if you've heard music described with numbers like this. Okay, very good. It's the same kind of numbers that we might have if we say, oh, it's a 1, 4, 5, right? That's in the sense of the chord progression being the first degree of the key, the fourth degree, and the fifth degree of the key. But if we take that same idea and we apply it to an individual chord, we can describe any note as it relates to the root of that chord, right? So minor pentatonic, we would call it 1, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 7. And then it repeats 1, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 7. So what we're doing in this particular instance is we're adding in a note that would be called the third or the major third as opposed to the minor third. Minor, in my mind, minor and flat, as you're describing these notes, I'll often call it the flat third. I think the musically correct notion is minor third, but I'll use either or both, so don't worry. So we don't want to get too bogged down in theory, particularly like classical music theory that doesn't understand the blues, but we can use some of the things from that world to describe the note that we're playing in a particular moment as it relates to the chord, right? I think that becomes then very helpful because whatever we can describe over an A7 chord, we can describe over any dominant seventh chord, and the numbers would stay the same. The note names would change, but the numbers would stay the same. So that's why I think of the numbers as sort of universal information and something can be applied from chord to chord. Now, one of the things that you probably noticed while I was playing that is that you could hear when the chords changed. Even though I wasn't frequently playing chords, I played a few of them as a kind of punctuation, but the melodies that I was playing started to describe the chords more thoroughly than if I had just played minor pentatonic only. So here's only minor pentatonic. Sorry. That sounds pretty good too, but it doesn't have the same quality of describing the chord of the moment. All of the roots of the chords are there, so I could play the D note on the D chord when it goes to the 4 chord. I can play the D note, yeah, and I can play the A note, which is its fifth, but I don't have a third in there. So that third is what really describes the chord so almost more than any other note. So we want to know where it is. And where for the 4 chord, where the third is, if you just play a D7 bar chord, you'll find it. It's the F sharp, right? It's under your little finger if you play this chord. It's also over here on the 4th fret of the D string, right? So when we change to the 4 chord, we want to know where that note lives in the pattern or in the shape in relationship to the basic shape so we can utilize it as we see fit. Now, that's a big question. How do we see fit, right? How do we know how to use these things? Ultimately, we start this journey by listening to music, and that's the most important thing. So everybody in this room that I see hold the guitar in their hand and maybe some guitars behind them on the wall, I would guess, I think I could probably say with about 100% certainty that everybody decided to start playing guitar because they'd already been listening to music and liked it. Did anybody take your first guitar lesson before you'd listened to any music? None, right? Everybody. So, but we have to remember that one of the most important aspects of our learning journey is to listen to the kind of music that we want to play. And listen a lot. And listen actively, right? Try and learn how to hum little licks and try and listen to something over and over and over. I don't think that anybody would ever come to a guitar lesson. Let's say a 13-year-old kid comes to a guitar lesson and I say, hi, Johnny, what's going on? What do you want to learn? I want to learn heavy metal, right? He's got a funny shaped guitar with a pointed headstock and a whammy bar, and that's pretty good. I say, well, what is some of your favorite kind of heavy metal music? Oh, I don't know. I haven't really listened to it. He's not going to say that, right? He's probably been listening to it really, really avidly, right? Memorizing everything he can memorize about the songs and all that stuff. So we have to be like that all the time. We have to really listen to the music we want to play. Doesn't mean you can't listen to music that you're not interested in playing. You could listen to opera or classical music or country music or something and not necessarily care much about playing that on guitar. But as far as being a student of the guitar, really got to listen. Listen and listen a lot. And listen actively, not passively. So have your guitar in your hand. Play along with your favorite records. That's the greatest thing you could possibly do, is play along with your favorite records. The actual record, if you like B.B. King Live at the Regal, I mean, you got the best rhythm section in the world playing on that record, for B.B. anyway. And so you play along, and B.B.'s feeding you ideas. You start learning how to fit in with the band. All kinds of those skills that you would eventually use if you're playing with a friend or in a group or whatever at a jam session would come in, you would come to your experience if you're playing along with really good records, right? And when you're playing along with really good records, listen to how what you're playing integrates with the band sound. Don't try and steal licks or something. What if B.B. King says, he says, I got a sweet little angel, and you were playing. And this is my job. With that great band. So that's important. Okay, back to the subject at hand, breaking into the boxes. So we want to find out where the third of all the chords we're going to play. And if there's only 3 of them, you got 3/3 you got to find. The C sharp for the A7 chord, the F sharp for the D7 chord, and maybe the G sharp. I think you can flirt with the G sharp. It turns out that the G natural also sounds really good over the 5 chord. So here's the E7 chord with the G sharp on top. There's a D7. So you can hear that sounds like the 5 chord on the one, but listen to this. That's sharp 9 or flat 3rd. I think of it as sharp 9 against the E. So that G is still good. So like I said before, we're not throwing anything out. We're adding stuff in to get closer to the blues vernacular, to get closer to the common melodies that get sung and played in blues music. Okay? Now, we can continue. There are some other notes that are really helpful and valuable to add in. 2 of the most common ones, we've already touched on this F sharp as it applied to the 4 chord. right? But we can also add in the sixth of the one chord. So that same F sharp can sound great on the one chord. I just played a little lick that had the 5 and the 6, the flat third bent up to the blue third. Talk about that in a second. Flat 3 to 3 and 1. So we understand that that sixth degree, the same F sharp that works over the D chord, works beautifully over the A chord. And we can add it in. It gives a sort of lighter quality. Some people might say, oh, well, Tim, don't you know that's the major pentatonic notes? Those are the major pentatonic notes. Okay, maybe. But somewhere along the line, this whole idea about, well, sometimes you play minor pentatonic on a blues and sometimes you play major pentatonic on a blues, and then all you have to do is figure out when to switch back and forth between the two. And everybody's confused about that because it doesn't really work out that way. When B.B. King is supposedly playing in major pentatonic, he's bending up to notes that are in the minor pentatonic, and vice versa. So there's sort of, I don't know why or when it started, but it's kind of a mistake to think, oh, I'm playing major pentatonic and minor pentatonic, and I'm going to switch back and forth depending on the situation. So what I suggest is we learn one big thing for each chord, which includes all of the notes that we might want. We know where they are, and we put them in as per the melodic needs of the moment. Okay, so that would be putting the sixth into the one chord. It's just putting the sixth into the one chord. Okay, the flatted fifth. There's even a scale that some people call a blues scale, and it would be a 6-note scale, which would be the minor pentatonic plus the flatted fifth. Okay, in a similar way that the flat third and the natural third or major third are often coupled together, and often from flat third to third, and not usually the other way around. That's not very bluesy. That is very bluesy. Then flat 5 to 5 is available under your first finger by moving back 1 fret and then bringing it up, or playing the 4th finger on the G string and coming up. And that particular friendship can go both ways, or down. So here's a line I want everybody to try. Start on the 5th, which is the 5th fret of the B string under your first finger. Play that note followed by the flatted 5th under your little finger on the next string down. Then come down 1 more to the 4th, then go all the way to the flat 3rd on the same string, and then back up to the 3rd, and then the root. I'll play it again for you. Try it. In context, I might say something like this. And then I can do it over the 4 chord. Oh, sorry. Yeah. There it is. It's not as convenient there, but I can still get that sound. Okay, so the flat 5 and the 5, some people might call it the sharp 4. Either way, it doesn't matter. You can call it Bob if you want to, as long as you know what it is and what it sounds like. So those two things live together. They don't always live, the flat 5 doesn't always live sort of by itself without referencing the 5. That may, you could try and see if you like that sound, you know. It really is a tension note that wants to go somewhere. Even if I bang on it like that, right? I want to eventually resolve it, right? So there's the flat 5. Now, all of the chords in the key can take their own flat 5 and 5 combination, right? and or all the chords in the song, whatever you want to describe it. The 1, the 4, and the 5 can do that. And then there's a couple of other notes. The 9 is really nice. The 9 is available on the top string, 2 frets above the root, and it's also available 1 fret below the flat third. Not as convenient there because it's not inside of the box, it's just right on the other edge of it. But it's a great one. So like B.B. King. Sorry. I think the 9 often likes to go up to flat 3 and then back down again. 6 also likes to go to flat 7. Try to play this, guys. We've got, so start on flat 3 and play the flat 3, the 9, and the 1. And then the same picture on the next string down will be flat 7, 6, and 5. Then the 4, and then this flat 3 to 3. The nice thing about these half-step away notes, the 9 can be bent to the flat 3. 6 can be bent up to flat 7. Flat 3 can be bent up to 3. Right? And as soon as you start bending, it sounds less like a piano, more like a saxophone or a voice. But that's putting the 9 in. So now we've got a minor pentatonic scale, plus we've got the natural third, we got the flatted fifth, we got the 6, and we got the 9. Well, the news about that is it's not called a scale. It's not a scale. There isn't any scale that has all of those notes in it, right? And if you made up a name for it, then you'd create another problem because we don't play it like a scale. Usually we think of a scale as we play it one, all the way up and all the way down, including all the notes. This is a kind of collection or a basket full of sounds that you can draw from, and you see them in light of the chord of the moment. So if I play the chord of the moment and I play all those notes against it, right, I can hear all those sounds in relationship to an A7 chord. Change. And go up here. It's all the same stuff. Back to 1. 5 chord. 4. That's more like a piano player might do. They might play, underneath in the left hand, and they might play, that kind of stuff. So, to give you something to actually do and a way to use this, let's make a line up on the 1 chord. I suggest flat 3 to 3, 5 to 6, flat 7. So everybody play that. End up on your little finger on the B string. There you go. Or you can use your third finger if you're more of a player that likes to do that. Or you could bend it. Okay? That's a simple little melody. Flat 3, 3, 5, 6, flat 7. And then we're going to take that little melody and play it in relationship to all of the chords in a 12-bar blues. I'll do it once and then we'll try and do it together. 4. So maybe a little different. 4 chord. Back to the 1. Up to the 5, 4, 1. I couldn't help myself. I had to finish it, right? So if we do that, one of the things you might have noticed that's a great turnaround. A turnaround is a little melody that follows the chords in the last 4 bars of a blues. So if you want to learn how to make a good turnaround, play a little melody for the 5 chord, move it so that it's represented by the 4 chord, so move it down a whole step to the 4 chord, move it down to the 1 chord and play a variation on it, and you're going to have a sound that sounds like a written melody or a pre-learned part, instead of just noodling randomly toward the end of the progression and letting the band do all the work. Okay, so let's try this. Let's remind you of the lick. 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3. Up to the 4 chord at the 10th fret, and then back to the 5th fret. 2, 3, 2, 3, up to the 12th fret. Talking instead of playing. Down to the 10th and back to the 5th. Now, if you were at a blues jam and all the other guys there with their little hats and their little soul patches were there with their 1956 Stratocasters and their Fender Bassman amplifiers, you're probably not going to be the coolest dude in the room if you play that. Okay, but it points to something that a lot of people don't really get, which is how to make melodies that actually reflect the form of a blues. So let me try and play it something like that, but juice it up a little bit, so maybe it would be something that you might like to listen to. Let's try again. 1, 2, 3. Something like that might be kind of cool, depending on the tune. If it's like a little Walter tune, and not Stormy Monday, but like something like a jump blues or a Chicago blues, that kind of stuff sounds great on that kind of a groove, So consider that. Notice that when I did that, I didn't always jump up to the 10th and then the 12th fret. All of these notes are available down here. They're a little obscured by the fact that the B string comes into play and it looks a little different, but they're all there. Okay? So, my idea about the blues is, if we want to look at the whole picture, not just sort of blues from, whatever, from, the British invasion forward, or from, the Michael Bloomfield forward, or even B.B. King forward. What we want to do is look at the whole picture and really work on getting a handle on this, what I call the blues vernacular. And whether it be gospel blues or spirituals that are bluesy, or old-fashioned blues with just 1 chord and a slide guitar, Delta blues, Charlie Patton, or things like that. Everything you want to learn and get your ear on everything, because that's all applicable to a kind of 12-bar blues, conventional, regular 12-bar blues thing. You can put all that stuff in. And if you're playing it all night long, you want to have a lot of vocabulary. You want to have a lot going on. The other thing that thinking this way does, which I think is really handy, is it takes away the run-on sentence problem. Very often when you're playing blues or you're listening to somebody else play blues, if you isolated the guitar player from the rhythm section, you wouldn't know what chord they were playing on. You wouldn't know where they were in the form. You wouldn't know anything. It might be a lot of blazing notes, but it doesn't necessarily carry the whole message. And sometimes that's okay. A lot of times that's okay. But I guarantee you, if you take a good guitar player, like let's just take Stevie Ray Vaughan. Stevie Ray Vaughan, kind of reinvigorated the blues in the, at least in the United States, because he was so good. He had such a deep history with the music, and then he brought it forward into modern times. If you take away his rhythm section, which was fantastic, by the way, no, they don't get enough credit for making him great. But if you just take away the rhythm section, you listen to just the guitar player, you're going to still hear the form. You're still going to hear the form of the blues. So let's talk about that for just 1 second, and then we'll take the rest of the time after that to answer questions. So the form of the blues is powerful and very, very important. And one of the things that you have to understand is if I'm playing a blues, there's a certain thing that happens. It's 3 4-bar sections, all of which have their own particular character. So if I sing a song, I like singing Kind-Hearted Woman by Robert Johnson. I got a kind-hearted woman. She's doing a thing in this world for me. That's the first 4 bars. Chord change. I got a kind-hearted woman. She's doing a thing in this world for me. And that was the second 4 bars. Still going. Now the last 4 bars. But these evil-hearted women, they just will not let me be. Turn around. I love my baby. Okay, and then it starts over, and there are variations on that. There are all kinds of things, quick change and all that kind of stuff. But basically, there's a thing that happens in the first 4 bars. Then in the next 4 bars, that same thing is reflected on, maybe repeated, but it's being played over a different harmony. Then in the last 4 bars, there's a kind of wrap-up, which may include information from the first 2 sections as well. Now, a lot of times, that is overlooked entirely by blues, especially blues rock guitar players. Right? So I say, remember you're playing a song. Right? Remember you're playing a song, not just an opportunity to blow your load all over the audience with as many fast licks as you can play. So if I do that, 1, 2, 3. So right away, because I'm having the melody in my mind when I play that, right? I'm not exactly playing the melody verbatim. I'm adding notes in to where the melody came to rest because there's space to do it. But I'm bearing that melody in mind. And so what it does is it gives the solo that I just played structure and form. So how do you get there? How do you incorporate that? I say, this is something that I've never heard hardly anybody say in blues. Learn the melody, the sung melody to the song. I got a kind-hearted woman. She do anything in this world for me. Right? Learn how to play that. Right? Because that contains so much cool stuff. If you really get close to the vocal on even the way Robert Johnson sang that song, there's all kinds of extra little twists and turns in there that we may not pay attention to if we're just waiting for our turn to take a solo. So learn the melody, copy the singer, learn how to play it. And it might be harder than you think. There might only be 2 or 3 notes in the melody. How do you make it sound like a melody if there's only 2 or 3 notes in it, right? Look into that. Look into that. And then use that melody, at least when you begin to play, as a model for your solo. And then, of course, you can expand on it and expand on it and expand on it. Maybe by the end of 3 courses, you're wailing away, you know, and really ripping. But begin with the core and the essential thing about the blues, which is these melodies, right? So I hope, like at the end of this, everybody goes back to their favorite blues records and ignores the guitar solo for a minute and actually tries to figure out how to play the sung melody, right? If you haven't done that, I think you'll be very pleased with the results if you do that. Okay, so I think that's about all. I'd be happy to answer any questions or hear any reflections about this.